Welcome to the shop. I've got the Avios Grand Tundra V2. This is a 1.7 meter STOL plane, 6S or 4S. It's got all the features, all the lights, all the coolness that you would want from a STOL plane, a big STOL plane. It is, I can't wait to show off how I'm flying this thing. I really enjoy it. Anyway, let me get into first all the pieces and parts, the assembly. I'm going to show the setup. I'm going to show a field setup also, just so you can get an idea of what it's like, you know, when you go to the field, how much time it's going to take you to set this thing up. I'm going to fly the heck out of it, and then we're going to come back here to the shop. So, but hey, look, if you like these videos, please hit that like button. It helps me out a lot. Down in the description, there is a link to this plane. And I highly recommend the good planes that Avios is cranking out. They go quickly. So if you want one of these things, I would get it now or even pre-order the doggone thing if it's not available. There's also a discount code below. So hopefully that'll help you out, save you a couple bucks. All right, let's get into it. Parts count for the Tundra. Doesn't look like there's much, but interestingly, there's a whole bunch of little pieces and parts to make this thing. It's not going to be an arduous process, but there are bags and bundles and screws all over. Going over just a couple things that I think are interesting. You know, one is, as I'm looking through, there's lights all over this thing. Very nicely done. A lot of lights. Looks like the flaps here are metal gear, ailerons are not. Not that that matters a whole lot. Big old beautiful setup for flaps. Foam hinge here, but again, you know, not a big deal. At least not to me. Screw together, the wings look like they just screw on, and then you have obviously the struts that need to be attached. Figure out how that works. Got the rudder, looks like it snaps into place. Elevators, big control surfaces, foam hinges. Look like the assembly on that is simple. Fuselage, big, beefy. Got a top hatch here, similar to the Super Timber. And here we have where we'll put the receiver up top, and then under here, big battery compartment. And we'll figure that out as far as what 6S battery we're going to use. Great tires. In fact, I might get a pair of these tires for one of my other STOL planes. Landing gear, as I pointed out, looks like it's pretty interesting the way this thing goes together. I've heard it is fantastic. That's pretty much it from the part count perspective. It's just going to be a lot of fiddly things. I'll take you along the ride of things that might need a little bit more direction based on versus what's in the documentation. So I'm not going to get into too much, you know, granular detail, but if there's something that doesn't quite fit right or work right and there's workarounds, I'll show you that.
As I said earlier, the landing gear is just simply awesome. And it attaches to the fuselage and gets set up very simply. You know, basically you're screwing it down into the fuselage, and then there's another piece that connects and kind of ties it all together. The other part of the landing gear is a little trickier, but it's, you know, not a big deal. It all slides together and it's pretty simple as far as there's a long screw and a nut, washer, and a spacer, that little plastic spacer right there. That's important. You put that in there, get that all tightened up, make sure everything's moving properly, and you're good. The springs are rubber bands. They give you a handful of rubber bands. Well, not really that many at all, but they give you some rubber bands. I wanted mine a little stiffer, so I put on an extra rubber band, but they kind of tie together like that. And then voila, you've got a really super stable, cool landing gear.
The awesome inflatable tires just slide on the axles, and there's some screws or nuts that have a nylon washer that just tighten them down.
rudder install is super simple. You just press it into place. There's an audible click, and then there's a screw that gets tied in, down in the bottom just to lock everything in place. Beefy tail wheel screws into the fuselage, and then you'll connect a couple springs to enable that to move around. Horizontal stabilizer slides together like every other horizontal stabilizer for the most part. You got a carbon fiber spar, you slide that in place, and the actual elevator kind of keys in. There's a couple screws you got to screw together, and then on this one there's some nice braces. They only go in one direction, but then there's some tiny screws that get used to lock it all together. It's very, very simple setup. Oh, don't forget this screw. For the receiver in this plane, I'm using a Lemon RX 7-channel. Has a gyro, but I didn't turn the gyro on, so I'm just using it plain Jane. Attaching the wings is pretty simple. You slide them on the carbon fiber spar. There's 4 screws you tighten up, and then you put on the spars. I'm going to go into more detail on the field assembly for this part. So one of the things I'm going to do when I install these control rods, that they just slide into the servo and then obviously push onto the ball link. But as you notice, there's a light flashing because I often will power up my receiver and make sure everything is neutral. And I'll either do that before and then unplug it. But in some cases, I like to keep it on because as I'm kind of manhandling the servo, it doesn't move, right? It's locked in place because it's on. Let's talk a little bit about the prop. So the stock prop goes on just like any other stock prop. Slide it on the motor shaft, put a washer on it, the spinner, tighten it all down. You're done. However, there's some options. The stock prop is for a 6S. If you want to fly 4S like this, you're going to need to buy a 16/8 prop. For initial setup, I just use the recommended throws. Put in my Expo like I usually like it, and that worked pretty well. Do want to cover the field assembly for this plane. It's a 1.7 meter plane, so it's pretty big. So field assembly is required. I usually keep the carbon fiber rods in the plane. Everything else is inside the battery hatch. The struts, pull those out. I've got a little box with all the pins, because there are quite a few pins that need to be put in, and screws. Slide the wings on and push them into place. Be careful, don't push on the end of the wing or else you'll crinkle it a little bit. Now install the 4 screws, and now the wings are locked in. There's a strut for the left side and the right side. The struts fit on a pin that's attached into the fuselage there. The problem with mine is that pin was inside the fuse quite a bit. You had to use a pair of pliers to pull it down so everything fit properly. There's a total of 6 cotter pins that have to be put in place. 1 there on the fuse and 2 in the wings. There's a plywood battery tray that is held in by this little pin that rotates and pulls out. So take that tray out, strap in your battery. I'm using the Turnigy 3000 6S. You put the tray back in. It's a little tricky to get back in, and then the pin goes in and rotates, and then you're locked in, ready to go.
Can handle grass, no problem.
Make no mistake, our field is not a grass runway. There's minimal mowing, it's bumpy, it's horrible. But this plane doesn't care.
It's just an easy flying plane. A little more weight than some of the other ones, the lighter weight STOL planes. Because it's 6S, it's just a big plane, which is awesome. And it is 6S, so you have unlimited power. That's the thing about this one. There's some other planes out there that are good STOL planes, 4S. This one is just such a beast. Really enjoy flying it. And you flip on that full flap, and she is slow. It's just it's really a well-designed plane. Just gonna cruise it around nice and slow to show off its slowness, because that's what we like. Planes that can fly slow. I'm mixing in just a little bit of rudder on those turns. Coming in for a nice flyby.
Flaps up.
I have just a lemon receiver in it, no stabilization. It is the lemon receiver with stabilization, but I'm not using that. I just have it set up pretty basic right now. It has telemetry on it, but again, I haven't set up a whole lot. I just threw a receiver in and wanted to get this plane up and have some fun with it. The landing gear is the other cool feature. Watch this, we'll just dump it. And that landing gear absorbed all of that. The landing gear springs are rubber bands. Normal rubber bands you get at a, you know, get the bag of rubber bands at a, you know, Office Max or whatever. As you can tell, I like this plane. Flying with the Turnigy 3300. I think it's a 3300. I like the lighter packs. You can put a much bigger pack in it, but for me, I just like the lighter packs. I usually only fly for 5 minutes anyway. That's what I have most of my timer set at for something like this, even though it'll fly longer. One of the things on these planes that I do caution about, and that is how they stall sometimes. So here I'm clean, I'm feeding in elevator, and it will drop a wing like that. You saw that, right? Now it recovers real quick. You just neutralize the sticks for just a second, and it'll get speed, and then you'll be able to pull out of it. Pull them back, and it drops a wing, and you recover. Practice those stalls up high so they're not a surprise when you're down low. And on some of these planes like this one, if you try to do heavy rudder and opposite aileron, you know, that'll make it stall. And again, you know, it just takes a little bit of altitude to recover, but it's not a problem. Some pilots will, unfortunately, pull back on that elevator the whole time as it's spiraling into the ground. Neutralize the sticks, and you won't have a problem.
Landing flaps.
It is a beast. Really solid tail wheel as well.
Flaps up. Time remaining 1 minute.
All in all, yeah, this is an outstanding STOL plane. 6S Bruiser.
Landing.
And I really love putting on those full flaps and bringing these things
Flaps up.
You keep it in super close if you want. I mean, it's just such a fun maneuverable plane. Flies slow and has gobs of power. So what more do you want?
Takeoff flaps.
You know, if you're landing from
Seconds.
high grass, I mean, some of the grass here is not manicured very well. Let me see if I can get a good landing on the runway without bouncing it. That is kind of a challenge with this kind of plane, because it does have some Yeah, there we go. Nice. Nice three-pointer. All right. Avios Grand Tundra. Excellent plane. Excellent plane. Welcome back. All right, let's talk about a couple things. First, fit and finish of the assembly. You know, all the pieces and parts were excellent. There is a few things that have to be done. You know, tons of lights need to get plugged in. The struts on here need to get, you know, put in with the little cotter pins. I had some fiddliness with that. It took a little doing and some tweaking to get those to work right. I kind of mentioned it in the video. But other than that, the plane assembles perfectly. Getting the wings on for the first couple times requires a little force. Don't mess up the ends of the wings like I did by trying to jam them on there. But all in all, finish, you know, the design, outstanding, very, very good. There is something I really want to highlight from, you know, the design of this plane, and that is this landing gear. I've had a lot of STOL planes, a lot of STOL planes. This is by far the best landing gear I've ever used. It is a beast. The tires that they use, fantastic. I've got other STOL planes that, man, it's super difficult to land without bouncing all over. This, you can three-point it easier. You can land on the mains and roll out. You might get a little bounce, but it's not terrible. And it can take more abuse than I've seen any other landing gear take. I mean, this is an outstanding design. Well done, Avios. Okay, let's talk about flight performance. Look, it's all relative. I like to fly low, slow, in close. This plane flies that way better than almost any other STOL plane I have. I mean, and this has the unlimited power, which is awfully cool when you're doing some maneuvers and you want to have some fun with that. You know, it's not like I hover with this. I've got purpose-built 3D planes and aerobatic planes, but sometimes you just like to jam that throttle and go crazy. This plane can do it all. It is a really great multi-purpose plane, but for me, my true enjoyment out of this is low, slow, full flaps, cruising around and just doing those touch and goes. The landing gear is a beast, so it can handle rough landings, but I can also land it well. I've got other STOL planes that are horrible on our runway, and you can't really fly it off of that. You got to just only grass. Where this one, I can take off and land off the runway, and I can land on the mains, or I can do some three-pointers. So this is by far the best flying STOL plane I have for that purpose. So who's this plane for? Well, I'll tell you, it is an easy plane to fly. It is an easy plane to land. It has all the capabilities and features of a beginner type plane, but this is not your first plane. Do not get this as your first plane. Get yourself, you know, a specific purpose-built trainer and learn how to fly it well. Make those landings perfect. If you're flying on a tail dragger beginner plane, then this will transition over easier. If this is your first tail dragger, you might want to think about that. I don't think it should be. Anyway, that's just my opinion on it. All right, if you like these videos, hit that like button. Appreciate it. If you have any questions, leave a comment. In the description below, as always, I've got link to this plane, I've got a discount code, and I've got a whole bunch of links to Amazon of the pieces and parts I use when I'm making, you know, when I'm basically assembling these planes. So if you're so inclined, take a look at that stuff that I use and get it off Amazon. Yeah, so anyway, appreciate you watching the video. Take care. Have a great day.